Thank you. Please be seated. Right, thank you everyone. Can we go to apologies for absence, please? I've currently got Councillors Berry, Brooke, Cutler, Davies, Fletcher, Quartermain, Ryder, Oliver. Any more, please? Councillor Martin, yeah? Councillor Jeffrey, yeah, thank you. Councillor Neil and Atwood. Any more? Right, thanks for that. The green form's going round if anyone wants to sign it. Move on to the next one, number 3. The minutes of the meeting. They're just noted. Members are asked to note the attendance matrix as well. Yeah, can we approve the minutes? Sorry. Second, yeah, thank you. Obviously, the mayor's announcements. Sorry. Yes. Right. Right. We'll get that changed.
Thank you.
Is there anything else with the minutes? Can we get them changed? Anything else? Yeah? Right, thanks for that. Right, move on to the mayor's announcements. Over the last couple of months, I've attended over 30 engagements so far. It's been a busy start. I'd also like to thank ComSave Credit Union, who I approached and have kindly donated £1,000 to Zoe's Place. I've asked for that money to be given straight away because they've got a BAF appeal on, so that money's being given to them. I'd also like to thank them as well because they've given me £1,000 towards St John's Church roof appeal as well. That will go in the mayor's bank account but will be kept separate for the end of the year. I have 2 charity fundraising events lined up so far. On Friday the 27th of September, I'm going to have a charity race night at Cleveland Golf Club. Again, details of that will be going out shortly. And I've also got an event on the 8th of November at Loftus Social Club involving the Beer Pigs. And again, I'll get details out of that as soon as I can. I'm going to have them both at £10 a ticket and they'll all include pie and peas. So there you go, that's the selling point. Right, moving on then. Any updates from the leader?
Mr. Mayor, is it a point of order? I'd like the Chambers to see through a minute's silence for the poor victims of Southport, the horrific events, and the children that sadly lost life and their parents. Would that be acceptable by the Mayor?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay then, yeah. You stand, please.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. A new initiative which will save some of our families hundreds of pounds a year has been approved. We will enrol children entitled to free school meals automatically rather than parents being required to opt in and register. Hundreds of households will benefit from the new registration scheme, although parents and guardians will be able to opt out if they also wish. As well as saving families around £400 a year per child, more enrolment could lead to extra government funding amounting to hundreds of thousands of pounds for schools across the borough. The scheme will bring in a better outcome for our families, our schools, and most importantly, our children. Our officers have been speaking at schools across the borough the dangers of vaping after some vapes across the North East were found containing Class B drugs such as spice and cannabis. Trading standard officers and Cleveland Police officers toured secondary schools to warn about the serious health conditions which could be caused by the dangerous vapes. 4 new micro woods will be created in our borough for people to enjoy for generations to come. They are part of a national scheme to create woodland in urban areas which are easily accessible to the public. At least 2 of the woods will be at locations in the Eston area, complementing the wider Eston regeneration work, with further details to be announced in the coming weeks. A pot of money is now available to both people who want to start their business in Redcar and those running existing businesses. The Town Centre Grant Scheme aims to encourage entrepreneurialism, activity and growth in Redcar. In total, the pot is worth £250,000, made available to applicants on a match-funded basis across categories which encourage more business activity in Redcar. Finally, it is excellent news to see Coronation Park in Loftus is now being enjoyed by our residents. The restoration of the park was driven by a strong sense of community spirit, and the new facilities enhance the other public services nearby. I thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements from any other cabinet members? No, thank you. Any announcements from the managing director?
None on this occasion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on, questions we've received from the public. Is nobody here to speak? No? Right, so what I intend to do then is, I've got a number of options. I will ask the cabinet member to respond to them in writing, individually, but I will ask the cabinet member if she wishes to discuss overall view of them while you're here, so everyone understands that. Is that all right? Thank you.
Am I on? Yeah. This might sound a bit odd because the questions haven't been read out, so just to give everybody a bit of context, there are 4 questions. I don't think, did everyone get a copy? All right, great, everyone knows what to say then. To do with Laburnum Library, asking a variety of things. So I will send out a written response, but I prepared something to say. A minimum requirement for any voluntary organisation taking over the library would be to try and maintain the current levels of opening as much as possible. The VCA have confirmed this will include free public computer access. As previously communicated, it will still be an RCBC library, and the main points in the SLA have been shared in that. The book borrowing system will stay and the computers will stay. The finer points are being worked out and are naturally confidential, but where viable, services will remain. In terms of other council services, these are available at the main Redcar Library and will continue to be. There were some questions around people stuck at home, so we have the home delivery service and Borough Box. Trained library staff will not be present at the location. I think that's been made clear previously. But the space will be utilised by the VCA to be a more inclusive and offer a lot more to the local community than a library that's only open 2 days a week. It's unlikely that they'll be able to hire it out 5 days a week, because the aim is that they will be running lots of vibrant clubs, events and activities, as they do so at other locations currently. However, I think it's worth pointing out there are a range of venues across Redcar East, including Durham Road Community Centre, Zetland Church, Park Avenue Community Grocery Store, the church connected to that, and there are many groups that hire out free meeting rooms in the rugby club and Cleveland Bay, so it's not an area that's completely without other locations to use. I view the addition of this voluntary association to Redcar East as a fantastic asset, and I'm really confident they'll enhance the offer of activities available for local residents and be beneficial to the community. There were some then very specific questions. Will the activities continue to be free? I would expect at their other locations they put on some free and some chargeable depending on what they need to run those activities and sessions. Will it be a warm space with free drinks? It will be a warm space. I can't dictate whether they'll serve free drinks. Why is the book stock and toy stock being reduced? Simply for space. It'll need to be reduced. It's a small building. It's going to run new and different activities. However, the book stock's being invested in, and we will ensure a good rotation so that there's enough options in there. Will they still use Spark's software system? I don't know. We don't have that finer detail worked out yet. As much as possible, the aim is to replicate the current system whilst not preventing opportunities for the voluntary association to deliver everything they want to in the community. If for any reason the building is handed back, we would go through the same process of advertising and reletting. It had significant interest. I don't doubt another provider would be found in that event, but it's not being handed back. Things are going forward. I recognise the concerns of the community and the uncertainty a change like this brings, but I do hope that the new association is welcomed, engaged with, and positively established in that community by the other already established community groups. They certainly are passionate, vibrant, and committed to what they do, and I'm really excited once all the paperwork's signed to be able to come and tell you all about that offer. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to do like a recap, the questions that are being asked or submitted will be responded to by the councillor, cabinet member individually, and she's given an overview there, so we'll move on with the agenda. I've got children in care update. Councillor Suthers, please.
Come on, yeah. Hi. Well, we're all corporate parents. It's a massive responsibility for us all in this room. Something we should all prioritise. So I'm charged with reporting quarterly on progress in this regard. The timing of this report is poignant, I think. You will see from the paper that there's been a further increase in children in our care. At the end of June, there were 427. Previously, the number had plateaued just below 400. So that's a significant financial pressure, but perhaps more importantly, a reflection of a deep-rooted social problem in our community. And these problems have been building for quite some time now. They need addressing. They need addressing. Unlike some, I do think there's such a thing as society. But it's the increase in high cost placements which is most significant as far as the impact on the revenue budget's concerned. These are placements that cost £250,000 each. Some cost over £1 million. At the start of 23-24, the budget accounted for 32 of these placements. If you work that out, it's about £11 million. Already about 8% of the total revenue budget. During the year, there was an average of 47 high-cost placements. So that's a further £5 million pressure. At the end of the year, in March 24, there were 67 placements. 32 have been budgeted for at the start of the year. And more recently, 78. These are average £250,000 each. So I'll let you do the sums. I was going to do them, but I thought, you know, the numbers are massive, aren't they? It's a financial nightmare for our authority, and might add other similar authorities in the area. And the increased demand is exacerbated the financial pressure as private suppliers increase the prices, of course. Just got to move my screen up now, sorry. At Redcar and Cleveland, we've got lots of initiatives in place to ameliorate these pressures in the medium term. But in the short term, there's no silver bullet. These policy responses include promoting more foster carers in the borough, accommodating an increased number of high-cost placements of our own in-borough children's homes, recruiting social workers through our own training school, addressing the shortages and reducing reliance on expensive agency social workers, supporting the families through our family hubs and initiatives like the Pre-Burke team, SAFE, Shift, Thrive at 5, etc. And of course, John's fantastic multi-bank initiative. That was my introduction, so to the report. I see people thumbing through. I haven't got onto that really, have I? So I'm going to briefly, I think it's a big issue, so I thought I'd highlight that first. Briefly, as far as the report's concerned, at 6.1, the fostering team. We're struggling to increase the number of foster carers, one of those initiatives I mentioned. They have a stall and are attending a number of events to encourage new applicants. If you know of any events that they could attend, please can you let them know? 6.2, they have Your Say group. It provides an interesting feedback from children directly, from nothing more interesting than what they have to say about the service. 6.3, we're playing our part with separated migrant young people through development of the ridings in particular, but lots of initiatives. And by the way, these are all funded by central government, so they're not pressures on our budget, as some people might think. 6.4, children leaving care, always a traumatic and difficult time. Talking to one such young person at the Hear Our Say group last week. Becoming an adult, it's a problem for all of us, isn't it? That a difficult transition. And it's great to see the successes, or some of the successes, highlighted in the report. 6.5, school attendance is a problem. It leads to antisocial behaviour and exploitation. It's a problem here in our borough, but elsewhere as well. And it's something, one of those things that needs to be addressed. 6.6 and 6.7, the SAFE and Shift initiatives. These are just starting, and we should see the impacts of these hopefully in my next report. And then 6.8, No Wrong Door. Well, that's an example of Beacon as a children's home. We need to, it addresses both the financial and social aspects of one of our greatest problems, and we need to replicate this initiative as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second of that, please? Thank you. Any debate? Councillor Annaway.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your report, Councillor Southers, and in particular for giving us the number of looked after of children in our care, because although you said we can see it in the papers, we can't because it's not there. And obviously it is important that it is there in the Children in Our Care report. Could I also ask about the SAFE and Shift teams? It's very positive development that we have these new teams and the funding for them to work with exploited or children who are in danger of being exploited. Obviously we've got a VEMP team that's been doing that work for quite a long time. So how does the new teams work with the VEMP team, or will they replace it? Please, thank you.
Got no further? No one else? No? Oh, you've come on late then? Yep, sorry. Sorry, Councillor King, yeah?
Couple of sort of updates and things, if that's all right. The fun day that was held last week was attended by 4 councillors.
and I think it was a really fun day. So if anyone's got any leftover ward allowance, I would really like to ask you if you can divert it to that, because obviously funds are really tight. Apologies for the dates and confusion over the corporate parenting board. That should be sorted now or be going forward. The awards ceremony was run completely by the Have Your Say group young people, and I think I'd like to thank them for, I know this is not my report, but it's just an update that you might not get to hear. They did a fantastic voice, and really to see the increase in confidence, so well done to them. I'd also like to wish Jo Johnson, who's leaving as the virtual school head, who's done absolutely brilliant work around exclusions and everything, and also Vicky McLeod, the assistant director that's going, and hopefully we can all welcome the new staff into the role and we can hit the ground running going forward. My main point was regards the foster carers, and this is not something that this council is able to resolve without lobbying central government massively. And I just want to give an example that I've done some costings. If you fostered a difficult placement, you know, with high needs in 2000, you would receive a payment of approximately £500. Today, you would receive £300. If that had had inflationary cost rises every year, foster carers dealing with our difficult placements would be on £925 a week. And the reason we can't get foster carers is not because anybody fosters for the money, but you do need money to foster. You have to give up your whole life, you have to be there 24/7, and you've got, you know, additional resources that are needed. So keep lobbying central government, please, councillors, so there's, with our support, that we need to get the best outcome for our children, but we also need to support our foster carers to make sure that they're able to be there and support them. Nobody fosters for money, but you do need money to foster. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bill, for your report. In the introduction, you talked about budget pressures and finance a little bit. I think the report would have been more useful to have some of that information included, unless that's a further report, and that's fine. A few of us have been involved in the budget task and finish group led by Councillor Thompson. And I feel we've never had so much clarity around what the issues are around children in our care, and that's thanks to Claire Mahoney and her team. And we have heard briefly about the work underway in the North East region along the lines of the cost of children's placements. The market seems to be operating like some sort of cartel. And I've heard the leader speak about market shaping, for example, and I would have liked to have heard more about what's going on in that area, because that is the biggest pressure I feel that we are facing at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hargreaves.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Suthers, for your report there. My understanding is the Levelling Up Partnership will receive some money for more in-house places for children in our care. So I was wondering if you could provide the council with an update on when we expect to see the completion, and also how that will affect our finances. Is it going to be a big? Is there a lot of places, or is it just a few? And just a little update for everybody would be great if you can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that everyone here this time? Sure. No one else. Right, Councillor Suthers, please.
It's always a difficult one. There's lots of people always got lots of questions, and try and answer them as best I can. Craig, I'll come to yours first about the numbers. I'm sorry about this. That there should be some numbers attached to that as this report. There's been a little bit of an hiccup about it, and Vicky explained that at the scrutiny committee why they weren't attached to the report. So hopefully they'll be coming soon. I think the main figure is that increase in the children in our care, which is the number that I gave you, 427 now. And I apologise for that. As you know, we're in a bit of turmoil. We've got the new director starting on Monday. Vicky's not well. She's off ill. Claire's on holiday. Thanks, Jane, for coming to support me today. So those numbers should be there, and I apologise for that. Okay. As far as the other teams are concerned, Safe and Shift are there supplementing the event team So that's an additional additional support for it, because I mean, I tried to say we need to change the way our communities function, don't we? I mean, we've seen it as near as Hartlepool, haven't we, just in the last 24 hours, you know, this breakdown in our communities, which is really worrying, isn't it? It's a big concern to all of us. These are all initiatives, and with a number, I tried to list a few of those, which will be, I guess, in my main report, which is going to be, you're going to be listening to me again in another month or two's time, giving the main report from this cabinet position. This is sort of separate to that, but they're all working together. Hopefully they can coordinate together. It's our job to try and make sure they do. Karen, yeah, foster carers, you're a great advocate for foster carers, and it's true. You can't do things on thin air, can you? And foster carers need encouraging, and they need the money to be able to function properly, don't they? You know, and if we had the money in the authority, I'd be suggesting that we do that. You know, I'm not as au fait as you are with the mechanisms for that and the national rules with regard to that. But what I do get is it's not just about the money, but you do need the money to do the job. And we need to encourage more foster carers in our community. We desperately need more foster carers, and particularly foster carers who can take more complex cases, who are prepared to take more complex cases on. As you and I know, one of the problems with there being such a big demand for places, not just foster carers, but places in general, is that the children's homes, the carers, take the easiest cases, and we're left with trying to find places for the most in need at the end of the day. I hope that somehow answers your question. Carolyn, yeah, you're quite right. That I could have said a lot more about that. I was taking a bit of a risk with that introduction, because really that should be part of the main report. But I thought it's such a fundamental thing at the moment, with the numbers getting so much worse, that I needed to highlight it at the start, because this is you're not talking about 20,000 or 50,000. You're talking about 20 or 25 million pounds worth of pressures on the authorities. And with regard to that, we have on a Friday, I don't know whether everyone's aware, but on a Friday morning, 10 till 12, for the foreseeable future, there's a sort of a meeting. I don't know what we call it, that meeting, but a group of people to look at high-class placements, and you know, sort of a brains trust, trying to find some sort of solution to this. But I don't think there's a silver bullet. It's a big problem, an intransigent problem. So I felt I should highlight it now. I've intimated, I suppose, a moment ago about this market's failing, isn't it? Markets fail. You know, it's a fundamental, Paul will know, it's a fundamental part of markets that they fail. And this market's failing really badly. There just aren't enough, there aren't enough placements, there aren't enough homes for children with particularly large needs, extensive needs. Here, so many years ago, there must have been a policy to not have any children's homes, and I mean, some places have got a lot more than us. Somebody telling me Durham the other day got 15 children's homes of their own, and we're trying to work towards that, which brings me on to Niall's last question about that. We are doing something about it. We've got 3 or 4 or 5. I mentioned them the last time I did this report, and I'll be mentioning them again, so I won't go into detail, but there are some children coming on, and some will be due to be in place in August, September, so imminently. And we're looking for more, and we got some through the levelling up, and so forth. And I hope that's enough of an answer for that. But they are coming on, but we're talking about, you know, 8 to 10 placements, not 78 placements. So although we're getting more, we're chasing behind the wave, you know, it's getting further and further away, if that is a good metaphor. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Does council agrees the report, yeah? All right, thank you. Moving on, the leader, decision taken under urgent provisions.
Eh? It's the don't have the agenda in front of me. Oh, there it is. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to move through. I apologise, Mr. Mayor. Can I take this as read and move to the recommendations on page 34, the auto enrolment of the free school meals and maximising pupil premium? I did say this in my introduction, so can I just move the recommendations, please?
Have we got a second of that? Yeah, thank you. Does council agree with that? Yeah? Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, moving on. We've got no motions. We go on to the appointments. TVCA Audit and Governance. Councillor Grogan to replace Councillor Pugh. Is that okay? You want to agree with that, yeah? Right, moving on to questions. Obviously, we've got 16 questions. Everyone's entitled to 2 minutes to ask a question. If people can keep it brief, yeah, we much appreciate. So we start with Councillor Martin, who's not here, so that's... Is someone else going to do that? Right, okay.
It's to do with our focus on clamping down on littering as opposed to not clamping down on enforcement regarding illegal parking, and we were just wondering about the different approaches. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, the leader take that question, yeah.
A written response has been sent to Councillor Martin as he's not here. I imagine that should suffice.
Brilliant, that's quick. Have you got anything else? Is that, you okay with that, aren't you? Yeah, you said you were okay, yeah. Yeah, that was quick, good. I don't know. Standard's been set.
Yeah.
Right. Question 2 from Councillor Smith to Councillor Brown, the leader.
Saltburn residents and ward councillors feel that they have been let down yet again by this Labour administration in trying to address the many historic road traffic problems and issues we have along Marine Parade. The protest group Saltburn Against Promenade Changes appear to have a hotline too, and the ear of your party. Can I ask, what hold does this group have over this administration?
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Smith, Councillor Smith, sorry, for your question. This particular group hold no hold over this administration whatsoever. They did extend an invite to me, where I attended a public meeting last year with around about 300 residents, all opposing the parking and highway changes to the prom and the upper prom. The council will also be aware that there was myself, Councillor Hannaway did attend. Unfortunately, you were detained elsewhere, Councillor Smith, as was Councillor Thompson. And every single person in that room of around 300 residents were all strongly opposed to what you guys have put forward. So I would ask, when you say the residents of Saltburn, I would say that I listened to the residents of Saltburn on that particular issue, and they were telling me very much differently from what you suggested, Councillor Smith. On the second, on the overnight camper van charges, again, we listened to the people of Saltburn, the residents, and there were 2 to 1 against banning camper van overnight parking. So from just the feedback we're getting from our residents, from myself attending Saltburn, I'd probably say our ear was closer to your residents than your own are. Okay?
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Smith?
I convey to you the frustration, sometimes anger and disappointment Saltburn ward councillors feel in how we have been treated by your administration over these several parking proposals we have been trying to implement in Saltburn. The lack of consultation at times from officers and portfolio holders has been a disgrace, and if I may so, disrespectful to the democratic elected representatives of the town. We are still waiting an official announcement in a press release regarding the latest TRO decision. If it had not been for the apparent disclosure to again the Saltburn Against Promenade changes, it would still not be out in the public domain. You yourself made decisions on the hoof by declaring that at the public meeting that the Saltburn Master Plan consultation was abandoned, a total waste of 50,000 ratepayers' money. This decision was made without consulting the ward councillors and no doubt officers. What angers me the most is this constant leaking of information to this protest group, who, let it be said, do not represent the wishes and desires of the majority of Saltburn residents. They have received information and updates well before we have, and in fact, if I needed to know any progress on these matters, I just had to go on their Facebook page to find out. Your administration has a very strong and good working relation with the group leaders. Why is this? It is strongly felt within the town that you are keeping various members of this group sweet so that they will stand as Labour candidates at the next local election. Is this true?
Councillor Brown.
I don't particularly know any members of this group as members of this group. I think I know one as a resident. And however, I will apologise for the social media post. I believe the officer of the council, nothing to do with the administration, emailed a resident informing of the decision after he'd spoke to the 3 ward councillors. Can you just confirm that that's the case, that he did, the officer did inform you guys? Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, that's fine. But to say we're not consulting is absolutely untrue, Councillor Smith. The master plan, unfortunately, wasn't written by the people of Saltburn. It was written particularly by the councillors in instilling what they believed the right solutions, and they may well be the best solutions, but it wasn't written, as the prom clearly showed, by the people of Saltburn, and they weren't consulted, and we inherited a document that the residents weren't consulted on. So I make no apologies that we're actually listening to the residents of Saltburn. Hence why, as an administration, we're putting £200,000 into the future, long-term future of the cliff lift. Hence why we resurfaced the upper prom, replacing all the handrails, replacing the benches, doing down the lower prom as well. So I absolutely refute the claims that we're not listening to the people of Saltburn, because we absolutely are, and we're consulting them, and this is the reason. If we put a consultation out and it comes back 2 to 1 against, and we still do it, how is that an example of not consulting and listening, Councillor Smith? This is the bit I lose in translation and get confused with.
Thank you. Move on to question 3. Councillor Hargreaves to Councillor Brown, the leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to start off by saying this question is on behalf of the residents, and they're here today, Alex, just to see your response. If you can try and make it as comprehensive as possible, that'd be much appreciated. So, will this council commit to the residents that they will defend the decision made by the regulatory committee in December regarding the Rowan Garth extension? And will the council be open and honest about the discussions taking place going forward?
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves. First of all, just to clarify, planning law and regulatory law isn't for the administration to decide or overturn or decisions. It's for the regulatory committee and the chair of that said committee. However, what I will say on the monitoring officer in his decision not to appeal it was based on the King's Chamber barrister, which I'm assuming, we all would assume that they're qualified to be working and giving legal advice to the King. And he said 95% chance of the appeal not being upheld or for us winning, bearing in mind I voted against this development 2 years ago, at a price of potentially up to £500,000. So I suppose what the question is individually is, all as councillors, would you gamble £500,000 on a 95% chance of losing? That would be the question I'd ask us all individually. As a council and administration, we've got no power over what planning law and the regulatory committee do, Councillor Hargreaves, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of. I voted against a couple of years ago with these guys, listening to these guys, so I absolutely feel their frustration. However, legal advice. I mean, would you yourself? Would you gamble 95%, $500,000 of your parents' money with a 95% chance of losing it?
Councillor Hargreaves, do you have a supplementary question, please?
The council, unfortunately, so it's a hard question to say, but yeah, I would. I'd support the residents, and I've supported them the whole time, so my opinion is we should do it. I was going to ask, the supplementary question was, can you tell us if any elected members were involved in the decision-making process that decided to withdraw the reasons, or is this just another case of the Labour administration letting the officers run the council?
Councillor Brown.
Politics, Councillor Hargreaves, at least get the process correct. It's a regulatory committee that's got nothing to do with the Labour administration. It's made up of people from your side, that side, over this side, this side. Don't play politics with it.
Listen, you've asked a question, let him answer. I don't want to shout it out. It's happened a couple of times, right? Let's have a bit of order, yeah? You ask a question, you get the answer, and we move on. Thank you.
I do understand there might be a potential by-election coming up very soon, close to this development, and I understand the need to get it right for the residents, but let's not play politics with this now. Let's not try and blame Labour for it. Many people that were in 2015 and 16 voted against the first 800 houses, okay? Then the Conservative Secretary of State overturned the results, or we wouldn't even be here. So let's not play politics and try and blame a Labour administration. The monitoring officer has made a delegated decision outside the administration on the advice of the barrister. Nothing to do with Labour.
Thank you. Right, moving on. Question 4. Councillor Grogan to Councillor Brooke. Is that you? Take that one, Councillor Brown, is leader, yeah? Thank you. Councillor Grogan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a bit more of a chilled out question for you. Cheers. Volunteer groups are vital to our communities within the borough, like they are anywhere else up and down the country. These groups provide a service, and without them, people, businesses, and our areas would be poorer without them, and this authority would be in a poorer state financially than it already is. We must help these groups as much as possible, from the Friends of Redcar Cemetery, New Mask in Bloom, obviously this was for Adam, Greenstone Generations, the one charity he helps, and also borough-wide Southgate litter pickers. This weekend, just gone, I was litter picking in Kirkleatham with the Southgate litter pickers and learned what their roles entail and how this council helps their group. I was surprised to learn that the litter pickers have been given some criteria by the officers to follow when it comes to litter picking in our communities. They have been told to stick with Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council areas only if they want their rubbish to be collected for disposal. This causes some confusion, especially with mapping issues, as they are aware of private companies and private land, but this also leads to areas under mapping controls of Beyond Housing or private estates and any other housing association controlled areas. With the change of how Beyond Housing and the council deal with fly tipping due to costs and doing their own thing due to those rising costs, the Southgate litter pickers have been told by the council not to dispose of litter waste from private housing estates and social housing areas. Is it true that the community groups can collect litter from these areas and have its waste disposed for free?
Councillor Brown.
Firstly, thank you, Councillor Grogan, by the way. I've seen you out with the litter pickers in our own ward, sort of helping and supporting. Well done. I donated, they've got a saw that I donated money to a year or two ago as well, so thank you. To answer your question, all private landowners responsible for the clearance and disposal of waste on their own land. This includes social housing companies like Beyond Housing. Following the end of the SLA with Beyond Housing, whereby Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council collected and disposed of their waste, Beyond are also responsible for their own disposal costs. Redcar and Cleveland have a long history of working alongside community groups as well as partners, and whilst we will not collect and dispose of waste collected on Beyond land, we have and continue to support Beyond on any days of action events with other partners, including the fire brigade, where we support the removal of large items to enable safe and effective use of skips. This is completed under a Community Safety Partnership Agreement.
Do you have a supplementing question? No. Thank you. Moving on to question 5. Councillor Pugh, are you taking this one as well, leader? You might take them all. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for filling in. The question is, you know, across the borough, we regularly see roads resurfaced, and then a few weeks later, a utility company comes along, seemingly digs it up and replaces it with an inferior surface. I won't read the whole question out because you've got it there. So the question really is, what can the council do to address this? Because at Nornby Top, as councillors will know, we've had the High Street shut for 12 weeks. They've done a good job, they've resurfaced the road, but then a utility company's come along already, dug it up and replaced it with a different coloured and an inferior surface. Just what can we do in future?
Councillor Brown.
Absolutely a layman on this stuff, so I'll read out what. Good ringtone though. All utility works in the highway are undertaken under the New Roads and Street Works Act legislation. Once a scheme is completed under the New Roads and Street Works Act on a Section 58 restriction is put on the carriageway, 2 years for resurfacing, 3 years for reconstruction of the carriageway, and 1 year for resurfacing a footpath. This prohibits utilities from undertaking any planned work until it comes out of this restriction. The legislation does not allow us to stop them from undertaking emergency work, from applying a customer with a new connection, or from repairing utility apparatus. When a utility company needs to carry out an excavation, we arrange a site meeting before they start work, so the extent of the carriageway footpath can be reinstated to be agreed before the work commences, and the materials should always be of the same type as the existing materials. There is some further stuff regarding somewhere in your ward. Do you want to ask a supplementary or?
The cabinet member. I think that, yeah, the difficulty is it has been torn up and resurfaced. What I'll do, I'll email the cabinet member after this and we'll try and resolve something.
Okay, but there is a little bit more additional information regarding Normanby Top, so I don't know if you want to hear that now. Too long after the council's works were, unfortunately, at Normanby Top, not long after the council's works were completed, a Northumbrian water inspection cover and chamber filled in the carriageway. Due to the position of the apparatus in the carriageway, a temporary make-safe was installed to ensure the carriageway could remain open. A permanent repair and reinstatement is currently being planned and developed by Northumbrian Water. These works fall outside the restriction of the Section 58 restriction. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Leroy to Councillor Smith, Chair of the Regulatory Committee.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to point out, for the sake of the minutes, that I've made a couple of errors with regards to the dates in the questions, 6 and 7. So with regards to the 20th of December 2024, that should read 20th of December 2023. And with regards to the date mentioned, 20th of October 2024, that indeed should read 20th of October 2023. Councillor Smith, with respect to the decision for the Council not to defend the case of land adjacent to Silverdale Gardens, has the Regulatory Committee held a vote to overturn the previous decision to reject the proposal made 20th of December 2023?
Councillor Smith.
Thank you for your question. No vote was taken.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Leroy?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, do you recall, during your 8 years, I believe, as planning chair of the Planning Committee, an occasion where an officer has applied pressure on your committee or on you as an individual not to reject a planning application based on fear of appeal costs or similar?
Councillor Smith.
The Regulatory Committee did not make a formal decision on this, but from a briefing from the monitoring officer, and was consulted ahead of him making his decision, and accepted the position that we are in. The decision could technically have referred back to the committee, but the committee would have faced exactly the same situation. Planning decisions are difficult because residents are often opposed to developments and councillors naturally want to support them, but as in this case, there are sometimes no legitimate planning reasons for refusing planning permission. The committee did its best to support the residents in this case, and if an appeal had not been lodged, then it would have succeeded in doing so. However, developers have a legal right to submit an appeal, and whilst the council would always attempt to try and defend a committee's refusal of permission, if there was some chance of success in this case, we have firm expert legal advice that we simply cannot win, and that costs would be rewarded if we continued to try and defend this decision. Now, I'm quite willing to share that decision from the advice from the barrister, and I think it's available to all councillors if they wish to see it, but I will go through it. So, there was 4 reasons why the committee refused, and I'll give that reason first, and then the barrister's reasons, his advice. So the first one, the proposed development due to the access along Silverdale Gardens would be detrimental in terms of highway safety and would have an adverse impact on residential amenity. The development is therefore contrary to parts P and B of policy SD4 of the Redcar and Cleveland Local Plan 2018. The barrister's advice on this was, the proposed access accords with allocation policy H314B and with the council's evidence to the local plan inspection that an access from the A174 would be unacceptable. Therefore, there is no policy conflict with the access per se. In the absence of any technical evidence from a suitable qualified highway expert, I do not consider the reasons for refusal to be defensible. Furthermore, unless expert highway evidence can be presented to the appeal to defend the reasons for refusal, then there is a high likelihood of costs awarded against the council. Reason 2 for refusal by the committee. The proposed development, due to the numbers proposed and the location, would be overdevelopment of an existing green space. The proposal is therefore contrary to policy SD3 and Part C of policy SD4 of the Redcar and Cleveland Plan. The barrister's advice, it is wholly unreasonable to refuse an allocated development, which means the principle of development is established on the basis of conflict with a settlement boundary policy, SD3. SD3 does not apply to the scheme. The reason for refusal is totally undefensible, and the cost application is nigh impossible to resist. Reason 3 for refusal by the committee. The council is well in excess of the housing requirements and the development is not needed. The proposal is therefore contrary to policy H1 of the Redcar and Cleveland Local Plan. The barrister's advice on this, the reason for refusal is nonsensical. The housing requirement is in H1 is a minimum, and it is delivered through the allocation in H3, including the allocation of the site in H314 local plan. Refusing the scheme on the basis of conflict with H1 fundamentally undermines the adopted local development plan. This reason for refusal cannot be sensibly defended. I cannot see a rational argument to resist the costs application. And finally, the reason 4 for refusal by committee. The development of the site would result in a loss of biodiversity and nature conservation, which have a detrimental impact on the area. The proposal is therefore contrary to Part O of policy SD4 of the Redcar and Cleveland Local Plan. And the barrister's reasons he gave are set out in the officer's report. The scheme will result in a net gain in biodiversity units with a net gain of 2.85 units in relation to habitats and gain of 0.74 hedgerow units, giving a net gain of 25.25% in the habitat category and 115.06% in the hedgerow category. There were no objections in the scheme from Natural England. The reason for refusal alleged conflict with SD4, this policy requires development to respect or enhance the landscape biodiversity. Given the detail in the application, the consultation responses and the officer's report, and then in the absence of a contrary expert evidence, I cannot see how this reason will be defended. I also think the costs application will be likely to succeed. And finally, he sums up, in short, on the information before me, the Council's chances of success at the appeal are vanishingly small. It is indefensible. The costs application is very likely to succeed. So, Councillor Leroyd, you may want to continue to act recklessly with the finances of this local authority, which are perilous to say the least at the moment. And no doubt you will continue to make false and groundless planning promises to your social media following. But I am sure the majority within this chamber do not support your stance. So to continue with this appeal would waste hundreds of thousands of pounds of council taxpayers' money, equivalent to around 0.5% council tax rise for the borough. So difficult though it may be, this is clearly the only sensible decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to question 7. Councillor Leroy to the Leader of the Council.
Yes. Please can we make a stab at least at the question that was presented rather than answering an imaginary question. So, I'll move on to question 7. Councillor Brown, the planning application adjacent to Silverdale Gardens was rejected, as mentioned. It was done so with Councillor Neil in the chair. Councillor Neil was in the chair as I was removed from the chair, or indeed stood back, due to an email dated the 20th of October 2023, which went to a planning officer from Taylor Wimpey requesting the same. Taylor Wimpey's decision to go to appeal first emerged the 22nd of April 2024. In an email to the same planning officer, an FOI reveals an extensive dialogue on and off email with Pegasus, Taylor Wimpey's agent. Councillors and residents were not informed of the appeal until 26th of June 2024. The above planning officer was then asked on the 1st of May 2024 by me about the appeal and claimed to have not heard back from the applicant. On the 25th of July 2024, I became aware from a planning inspector notification that Redcar and Cleveland Council had withdrawn their defence. For the clarity of councillors, no case or hearing normally occurs when the settlement is made outside of court. The effective end of the case was determined by the Council's monitoring officer, acting as the legal officer. In an email dated the 26th of July 2024, the monitoring officer justified their decision to remove the Council's defence on cost grounds. To remind councillors, the definition of a monitoring officer according to the government is as follows: to report on matters they believe to be illegal or amount to maladministration, to be responsible for matters relating to the conduct of councillors and officers, and be responsible for the operation of the Council's constitution. In their reply to my email 26th of July 2024, questioning of which all councillors are copied in, the Council's monitoring officer replied, I have delegated authority under the scheme of delegation to deal with legal proceedings, as indicated in the Constitution at 43. The power states that the chief legal officer, an officer, can withdraw from a legal case. However, a planning appeal is not a legal case, but a planning case governed by the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The case law makes clear that an officer does not have the power to override a prior planning committee decision, particularly when it comes to cost grounds. I have given you 4 examples of such cases, but the most pertinent is R versus Tunbridge and Marling Borough Council from 2020. It states, some care needs to be taken in advising a planning committee of the risks of costs associated with defending its decision on a planning application, whether on appeal or if challenged at the High Court. That is because the exercise of planning judgment under Section 70 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 must be limited to considerations of the land use, planning merits of the proposal. It could be viewed independently that the action of the monitoring officer on the 25th of July 2024 to notify the planning inspector at the end of Redcar and Cleveland's defence of Silverdale Gardens, according to case law, is outside of the law. It could also be considered that their action as legal officer was in direct conflict with their own statutory role as monitoring officer and duty to report any matters believed to be illegal or maladministration to the government. In addition, The monitoring officer action could be externally regarded as bringing the council into disrepute, as the democratic principle of the separation of powers has been breached. The council decision making has been overturned by an unelected officer, and we've had that confirmed today by Councillor Smith. How does the council leader view this matter? Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Leroyd. I think we've got an opportunity here, Tristan, to not peddle in false hope and mixed messages and misinformation, and I'll hopefully certainly be part of that. You know, I feel their frustration as I've voted twice against the development. However, when it comes to something like this, if I was going to get a vaccination, for instance, you being a doctorate and a very educated man in that, I would come for you to advice. I'm not going to take your advice or other members' advice or social media over a barrister working on behalf of the King in his chambers. Okay. Now, whilst you make some very serious allegations, what I am going to do is refer this for investigation to the managing director of the council. That's what I am going to do. Okay, because I am not an expert in this, and that's why I am doing that, okay? However, I've read the legal advice. Have you read the legal advice? Where it opens up with the original decision was entirely illogical, and we would have around about a 95% chance of losing any of appeal, which essentially we're saying we're going to spend £500,000 of taxpayers' money. Again, I'm not falling on either side of this because I have voted against it, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I voted twice against the appeal. But to answer your question, I've read the legal advice. I understand why the monitoring officer did take the steps he did. But again, as a layman, I'm referring this to the managing director for an investigation and a full written response to yourself, Councillor Leroyd.
Do you have a Excuse me, there's no debate from the public. It's a question and answer between councillors. Councillor Leroyd, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I don't want to confuse here the merits of the case with the action that's been taken. So we're discussing the action that's been taken afterwards rather than the merits of rejecting or accepting the decision, of which I wasn't part of that committee and didn't make the decision. However, I just want to, for clarification here, bearing in mind the monitoring officer as defined in the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 as having responsibility to report on maladministration and failure under Part 3 of the Local Government Act 1974, to understand where your response came from, please. For example, if I were to FOI emails from this week, I hope that I wouldn't find that your answer had any input from the monitoring officer. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I can confirm that I've been in conversations with the council solicitor, Andrew Hickson, on this particular point, because you're completely right, it would be complete conflict of interest, hence why I've referred it to the managing director to investigate and get back to you fully. But I think just to take us back to this whole political sort of messaging behind this, the legal advice is the council would lose £500,000 at a time when we're overspending because of children's services. I appreciate we all want to do the best job for our residents, but surely there's a balance between being populist and being true, and that's all I ask for.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson to Councillor Richardson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will be public firework displays held in November, organised by a variety of organisations. When these are held on private ground, it appears that the local authority has no jurisdiction over the conduct of these events, and although many members of the public may be subject to debris falling on their property as a result of fireworks released into the air, no action is taken by the local authority to prevent such anti-social actions, which can potentially result in personal injury and property damage. Will Redcar and Cleveland Council consider its responsibility for community safety and issue clear, instructive guidelines for any organiser of firework displays on how it should manage its events to mitigate against causing injury to individuals and damage to property, and clear guidance for members of the public on how to register any instance of such damage or injury.
Councillor Richardson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no jurisdiction over anything on private land. If we issue generic guidance about events on private land, it will be the wrong advice for some events because the specifics matter, and in the case where our guidance is followed and something goes wrong, we could be liable. We've seen this recently where someone got injured at a triathlon and sued the council even though it wasn't our event. They were able to do so because we supported and helped out and essentially made ourselves partially liable. The council does not have any jurisdiction over events held on private lands, and event organisers are encouraged to engage with all relevant authorities, including where applicable, fire, police, and it's also recommended that larger events or those with specific requirements engage with ISAG, which is the Independent Safety Advisory Group, which will provide guidelines as to things event organisers might take into account when planning their event. Any registration of damage should be made known to the police. It isn't our responsibility.
Thank you. Do you have another question, please?
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor, thank you. If unable to exercise any statutory authority, can Redcar and Cleveland Council engage more proactively with other relevant organisations, possibly including the Health and Safety Executive, as a matter of priority to promote a safer environment for local communities and residents in the proximity of public and privately organised firework displays or events during which fireworks will be used?
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we will look into it. However, we must, in this current climate, draw a hard line about what is our responsibility and what isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson to Councillor, the Leader of the Council, I imagine you'll be taking this one, will you? Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, I understand Councillor Brown is going to take this question. Thank you. So the question is, following a motion passed unanimously by full council in 2022 to address the issues of motorhome parking on Marine Parade and Glenside in Saltburn, the council finally proposed in February this year to make an order under the Road Traffic Regulation 1984 prohibiting the parking of motor caravans on those roads between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. A draft order, which, together with a statement of the Council's reasons for proposing to make the order, were made available for examination at the Council offices. Any resident wishing to object to the proposed order was invited to send grounds of any objection in writing to Emma Garbutt by the 26th of March 24. No invitation was given to residents to write in support. It was not until social media campaign posts brought the order to the attention of some residents and also to the intention of campaigners to contest the order, that some residents felt that indications of support should be submitted as well. In the event, a net 37 persons registered objection. In the previous consultation on the Saltburn Master Plan, which I have to say, Mr. Mayor, if I may, was not the brainchild of the 3 ward councillors, as was stated earlier. The previous consultation on the Saltburn Master Plan, when all residents were written to, 1,194 replies were received, and 58% of respondents highlighted motorhomes as a top priority issue. A petition was also received during the publication of the order. Of the 1,205 responses, only 20 full postcodes from Saltburn were recorded. With the Council's guidelines for completion of petitions to include full addresses, and that only eligible participants were to be those that resided, worked or studied in the area. It is perhaps worth noting that petitioners were recorded in the response from such places as Italy, Bulgaria, India, France, Finland, Belgium, Sweden, Netherlands, New Zealand, Cyprus.
Can we sum up, please? Because you're way over your time. I've been lenient, but we need to.
It's
Right.
getting amusing, we should leave it. Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware that there is a time limit on reading a question. Right.
Mr. Mayor, just let him finish it. He's near the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am almost finished the question. Thank you for prompting me to proceed. Cyprus, Mexico, Argentina, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Greece, Serbia, Nigeria, Malaysia, Morocco, Australia, Romania, and South Africa, to mention some of the overseas contributions. Will the Council ensure that all future decisions on evaluating TRO responses are objectively considered, and every effort is made to ensure that all residents are made aware of the consultation process and invited to contribute?
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sounded like the Eurovision Song Contest there, and the score for Philip Thompson is 0. As Philip Thompson knows, the petition from Bulgaria, France, Germany wasn't considered in the decision making because of all the out of borough people that filled in the petition, through which we are aware of through the campervan websites and touring, and that played no part in the decision making, which you've been informed of. What did take part in the decision was the 2-to-1 consultation from residents. That was against the proposals, Councillor Thompson, and that's what the decision was made on the back of. The process for advertising and considering the traffic regulation order followed the standard procedure what we do every time. We will review the request made and implement when appropriate within legal legislation. But again, just to double down on that, the petition played no part in the decision not to instill the overnight car parking ban on camper vans.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Thompson?
Yes, I do have a supplementary question, Mr. Mayor.
You only get 1 minute now, by the way, I'm just saying.
I'm interested to hear the response from the leader, because it is in writing from the cabinet member that the petition was one of the deciding factors in making the decision. So that is right in writing. So if that is the case, Mr. Mayor, we have a total conflict of supply of information, and we really need to look at this again as a matter of probity. My supplementary question is, given the less than positive response, and I've explained why it is less than positive, will Council take notice that a motion will be tabled at the next full Council seeking to have this principle enshrined in the protocols for local consultation.
Councillor Brown, please.
I don't think there was a question there, was there?
No, no. Do you want to answer from that, or? Thank you for that. Moving on to question number 10. Councillor Taylor to Councillor Brown, the leader of the council, please.
As people are aware, I do feel strongly about the biodiversity side and the no more may, which, if it was managed properly, which is the idea behind my question, I totally understand the budget issues, the staffing issues and the control of pesticides. But I'm following up on a question I raised last year regarding the maintenance and management of the wildlife areas and pavements surrounding the borough. Despite assurance of these issues would be addressed last year for this year, it appears that the same problems persist, if not worsened. I previously suggested looking at other successful initiatives such as Leeds Council. In Leeds, they utilised local businesses to sponsor dedicated wildlife areas, generated approximately £350,000 a year in revenue. This income helps fund towards the necessary equipment and teams on the ground. The advertising that we currently do in the borough on the roundabouts is about 28 spots for the year, which brings in just £33,000. That's the equivalent of £1,200 per sign on average. Leeds offer this sign for around about £200 and generates far a greater income. So the wildlife areas within the estate are maintained to a high standard, showcasing beautiful and well managed environments. Given the successful model proposed, our council explores similar sponsorship and advertisement opportunities to help our local environment and ensure proper maintenance. This approach not only beautifies our communities but helps with biodiversity, also provides a sustainable source of revenue that keeps our residents safe and happy. I believe adopting strategies could significantly improve the upkeep of our local areas, better quality of life for our residents, and look forward to the response and hopefully work together on implementing some of these positive changes.
Councillor Brown.
Some excellent suggestions, Councillor Taylor. As you know, the biodiversity strategy just went through Cabinet. Officers, I'll make sure we work with officers to research and get some of them excellent suggestions put in there. Okay?
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Taylor?
Just to thank you.
Oh. Thank you. Right, moving on to question 11. Councillor Salvin to, again, leader of the council, please.
Yeah, thanks, Alec, for taking all these today. It's very much appreciated by all of us. We welcome the council's U-turn on the provision of free parking in support of local business, something that we have been campaigning for the last year. You may recall that the Conservative group brought a motion to council last July on behalf of the residents of Gisborough and other towns across the borough, asking that we consider how we might continue to provide free parking when the grant from the TVA expired. In large part, the motion and the petition were Councillor Kerr and Councillor Hart to the left of me, and we were shot down by various members opposite, unfortunately. I'd also like to thank Bill Clark this week for Councillor Bill Clark for his email. Good to see that other councillors appreciate what we've been fighting for the last year. Arguments against the free parking were vociferous. For example, from the leader, and I paraphrase a bit, why should a child in Kirkleven, children in Dormanstown and all the deprived wards receive less? From Councillor Robson, life expectancy in Redcar and Cleveland is lower than the national average. 35% of children are living in poverty. These are all arguments against the parking, by the way. And from Councillor Suthers, service costs are ballooning, costs of looked after children are expanding dramatically, which obviously we spoke about earlier as well. It seems to me here, and this is where I'm going to get a bit political, Alec, that it's fine, that Labour bring in a problem, yeah, and then Labour solve their own problem, and then you celebrate all over Facebook with your new members of Parliament about getting rid of parking charges that you brought in, which it just seems a bit bizarre. So please, just finally, can you please tell me what has changed since last year to bring about this U-turn? How is it completely beyond the scope of any possibility last year? because of the factors mentioned above, and now suddenly it's possible. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Salvin, for your apolitical, non-partisan question. I'm going to surprise a lot of members in the chambers by referring to Mary Lanigan and her administration, because she did the right thing. She went to Ben Houchin and asked him to extend the 2 hours free parking in Redcar in Cleveland, and he did for 6 months until just after the local elections. You could say that was, but I'm not suggesting anything, but if you want to read into that. Now, you're right, you did bring a motion to this council, and the full council voted to amend it and go to Ben Houchin. What did you do to ensure that that was empowered, knowing, which you would have done, knowing being so passionate about the free parking, that it had already been extended by 6 months in Redcar in Cleveland? What did you do to support the council and call for the mayor to extend the free parking at that time? I don't think you did anything, did you? Right, okay. So that's my point. If you cared so passionately about the free parking for the people of Gisborough, for the people of Redcar, you'd have absolutely supported the council's motion to ask the mayor to extend the parking, because he'd already done it 6 months prior to that. Now, what has happened since then, we inherited the free parking grant coming to an end, not when the central government funding came to an end, because he'd already chosen to extend it by 6 months. He'd made that conscious decision to do that, okay? We inherited a 10 million overspend, not because of the previous administration, because of children's services. We could not just sit there and immediately say we were going to cost 400, 500, whatever the big number was, okay? And what we've done over the months is work out how we could potentially listen and help businesses, just like we did with Saltburn, where we listened to the residents, and how we could best fund that. An hour in a little tiny spot isn't ideal, and we'd want to go further, but we can't. But we've had money coming in from garden waste and other reasons where we can listen. So my plea would be to you, again, if this happens again where the council goes to the TVCA with a motion and you really feel this passionate about it, support it. Because the mayor had already made the decision 6 months prior to that to extend the free parking, and it was in his power, and it was in your power to ask him to do it again.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Salvin?
I do have a supplementary, and just in answering that question about the TVCA, we did have conversations with Ben, and Ben was more than happy to take on the car parks and offer free parking, which the council obviously rejected. My supplementary question, and you've kind of led onto it a bit as well, Alec. A new administration is rightly allowed to make mistakes. This time last year, you were 2 months into your tenure as council leader, and you've rightly said, you had hard decisions to make at the start, and it took you 6 months to a year to see where we are. When it comes to these particular parking charges, should Labour have listened to us from day one to avoid this obvious mistake?
Councillor Brown.
Again, if did you say the mayor had offered to give us free parking there when you had a conversation with him? Is that what you just said? Can we take him up on that offer? Can we have the 2 hours free back? Is that what you've just said? But again, let's be honest. It's politics. You put it in U-turn. Should Labour listen? Should blah blah blah? We're a brand new administration. Politics are being played before the local elections, so it wasn't a big emotive issue, and so to try and keep Labour out. We both know that, and that's why it was extended by 6 months, and we inherited that. We didn't start playing politics with the free parking. The Conservative Party did, okay? And what we've done over the last year is listen, try and cost it in, listen to Councillor Kerr, listen to Councillor Hart, listen to Councillor Robson and Councillor Bill Clark, and sorry, I'm not going to forget, I did say Bill Clark, didn't I? Bill Suthers, sorry. Listen to all the we have done that, and residents. There's been no U-turn. We've done the best we possibly can, okay? And we will continue to do so. I mean, like, Councillor Taylor just made some really good suggestions that we're taking on board. Let's leave the politics at the door. Let's get on with serving the people of Redcar and Cleveland.
Thank you. Question 12, Councillor Kerr to Councillor Massey, please.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Well, I disagree with that last thing you said, Alec, because I very much believe that the council has...
Can we stick to the question to Councillor Massey, please? That question's already gone to Councillor Brown,
but it has been a dramatic U-turn. And my question is about how the decision was made, Councillor Massey. The Corporate Resources Scrutiny Committee met earlier the day that the policy was announced. Now, no mention was made at the meeting. You were there, the leader was there. So my question is a very genuine question. What is the relevance of a finance committee if there is to be no discussion of a major U-turn policy decision that is bound to have resource implications, and instead it be announced on Facebook later that day? Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Massey, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Kerr, and thank you, as always, for your engagement in the scrutiny process, which I know is very thorough, and indeed with the task and finish under Councillor Thompson, I know you've played a leading role in that. In relation to the Resources Scrutiny and Improvement Committee, the relevance of the committee in terms of the Constitution is to look over the Resources Directorate. Now, this particular policy doesn't sit within the Resources Directorate, it sits within the Growth Directorate. The other responsibilities of Resources Scrutiny and Improvement, the point of it, are to also exercise a general scrutiny function for the Council and call in for the Council as per the Constitution. Any non-programmed, non-budgeted issues are referred through the quarterly financial reports, which go to Resources Scrutiny Committee. But in effect, it isn't for our officers to come with every single line on the budget to every single meeting to tell us what happens, because we know we'll have certain overspends in some areas, certain underspends in other areas, but we employ corporate directors to manage their budgets and report to councillors on significant changes to those budgets during the quarterly process. Ultimately, this particular policy is a trial across selected car parks, but the implementation, financing and scrutiny of that trial sits elsewhere and sits within the Growth Directorate. In terms of the Constitution itself, resources portfolio, my portfolio, and resources scrutiny does not have the responsibility for car parking. The Constitution is very explicit. It's on page 123 if you care. It's very explicitly delegated to the Cabinet member and specifically to the Executive Director of Environment and Growth. In specific terms, the Constitution references, and this is a quote, that it can, the Director and the Cabinet member, determine, implement and operate a charging scheme on car parks. And that's a delegated power that sits within the Executive Director's gift in relation or in consultation with the Cabinet member, who is Councillor Quatermain. Ultimately, this decision was reached by the Cabinet member in consultation with the leader and actioned under the delegated authority of the Executive Director. I was not part of the decision.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Kerr?
Yes, please. Thanks, Councillor Massey. I followed some of that, maybe most of it. So was the policy decision discussed at Growth then, if it comes under the Growth? I understand car parking comes under Growth. And then thinking about the scheme of delegation, I think my question remains, and maybe it should have read, what is the point of a finance scrutiny committee under the current scheme of delegation? Because I am just beginning to wonder really how all these decisions are being made. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Massey.
Thank you for the supplementary question, which I think is incredibly fair. Just to be clear, it's not a finance scrutiny committee, it's a resources scrutiny and improvement committee. It looks after the directorate that is the resources directorate. Myself and Phil Winstanley, as the director of resources, we have a responsibility to ensure the council's finances, yes, but those other resources committees and the other directors and corporate directors have responsibilities to look after their own particular portfolio or directorate areas. So that's why I say this decision wasn't mine, because it shouldn't be mine. It should be Councillor Quatermain's in consultation with the leader and with the delegated authority that sits within the Executive Director, who for this is Brian Archer. So I think the general point of the Resources Committee is going back to my previous answer, which is it is there to hold the Resources Directorate to account and the reports the Resources Directorate gets, but it also is there in kind of, this is a bit of an old story, but in essence, for anything that is cross-council in terms of what used to be executive scrutiny for members who were here a while ago, Resources still retains call-in functions and call-to-action functions. But in a general sense, resources wasn't there to scrutinise this decision because it was not a decision of that particular directorate. In terms of growth scrutiny, that's not something I sit on myself, but I imagine that this wouldn't have been reported ad hoc at the at the Growth Scrutiny Committee, but would potentially form part of any quarterly reports that that particular committee has. But again, that sits with a different cabinet member and different director to the service area that I lead on.
Thank you. Can we move on to question number 13, please? Councillor Hannaway to, again, be the leader. The leader, please.
Councillor Quatermain, in a meeting on the Thursday, the 11th of July, with Wee Ward councillors, was informed by officers that these TRO consultations only asked for objections to a proposed scheme, not support for it. In this case, the Marine Parade one. But despite this, he subsequently said in an RCBC Facebook post, quote, "The consultation for this proposal received 81 objections and only 44 in support," unquote, treating the official solicitation of negative responses as if it was a public poll. Is this not clearly a misrepresentation of both the nature of the consultation and the views of Saltburn residents? He also stated in the same council Facebook post, quote, "In addition to this, the council received a petition of 1,820 people who were against the introduction of the ban," unquote, but failing to mention the Nigerians, the Dutch, the Australians, the Belgians, or indeed anyone. The vast majority of the petition signatories didn't live anywhere near Saltburn. This is spin. Why is he so determined to spin the truth in favour of a particular minority of Saltburn residents?
Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hannaway. I've already covered this question. If it said that in the comms, I didn't see that or sign that comms off. However, again, I repeat, knowing the decision making, the petition from out the area signatories was not considered in the final decision, and I apologise to the councillor if the council comms has given the impression that that has. However, what I would say, it's really heartwarming to know that people from Nigeria, South Africa, Papua New Guinea, Bulgaria, a lot of them like to come and visit Redcar and Cleveland in their motorhomes, or they wouldn't have signed it. So there, I would say, why discourage them people from coming and spending money locally? More proof maybe that that ban probably isn't the best for Saltburn.
Do you have a supplementary question,
Yes,
Councillor Hannaway?
Yes, clearly the people on Marine Parade talk of little else but the views of Nigerians. Is he aware that the Council's Director of Growth cited that full figure of 1,820, that petition, as one of his reasons for not passing this, and did not mention all of those different nationalities? Secondly, does he agree that it is an important fact that the survey for the abandoned master plan recorded much larger numbers concerned about mobile homes on Marine Parade than this consultation, in which they weren't asked? That Marine Parade, that master plan, not only did we not write it, we didn't even see it for 8 months after the officers had it. And in that public meeting, you raised your arm and said, "I'm scrapping this master plan," before you'd even informed us as ward councillors about it. Thirdly, do you recognise that no one who lives in the vicinity of Marine Parade voted to spend the summer months in a 55-space free camper park with no facilities, late-night noise, litter and chemical waste? Is he also aware that these camper vans like to get themselves nice and level by parking their wheels, sometimes all of their wheels, on the pavement that has just been repaired with tarmac at great cost to this authority, that they also spread their street furniture across the pavement, including recently a fire brazier? We believe that Council Director of Growth would have decided in favour of this ban had Councillor Quatermain not intervened.
You need to sum up, Councillor.
For obscure political
Please,
reasons.
sum up, please.
And if that's the case, just as a final sentence, could you ask these people in Saltburn for permission for us ward councillors to make a decision about the town now and again?
I'm not sure if there's a question there, Councillor Brown.
I don't know. Was there a question? Councillor Hannaway, I'll let you repeat. No, not all of it, just if there was a question.
Yes, I
We'll go all through it again, please.
Yeah, please
if you
don't.
were aware of these things. And did you agree?
Well, do you know what? I do agree that sometimes that camper vans, over the years, I mean, the vast majority of camper van owners and motorhome owners are just perfectly fine and behave perfectly fine and get rid of the waste perfectly fine. There is one or two. However, when I asked for the number of complaints into the council regarding the particular site, the number was extremely small. Are you aware of how many people complained directly into the council? All right, okay, yeah, okay. But just to answer the question, yes, I was aware that the director told me that the petitioner played no part in the decision making. Okay.
Thank you. Right, moving on. Question 14. Councillor Joy to be the leader of the council again. Councillor Brown.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Brown, if it's all right with you, I'm going to rescind my question because it's not appropriate, it's not relevant because it's already been answered with free parking in Gisborne, so thank you. Is that okay?
Brilliant, thank you very much for that. So moving on then to question 15. Councillor Hart to Councillor Brown, the leader of the council, in Councillor Brooks' absence.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Before I ask my question, Alec, I would just like to say that my question was altered when it was written down here. So I'm going to go back to my original question that I did send in, and I would be interested to know why my question was changed. I'm glad you're sitting down. I really am glad you're sitting down, because the question I'm about to answer is the problem that the new government have inherited. And they've inherited a massive problem from an older government, which I've been a part of, that hasn't handled it very well. And I'm prepared to say that publicly in this.
Public safety. At the beginning of this meeting, we had a minute's silence for what's happening in Southport, and on the back of that, we've seen protests in Hartlepool. Councillor Grogan has only this morning rightly raised the issue with tending in Redcar and Cleveland. We've got a far right parade, or whatever you want to call it, in Middlesbrough on Sunday. This question potentially, and I'm sure it's not the councillor's intention, and it's coming from a nice and kind place, but this could incite something on a public safety issue.
No.
Could I ask the councillor retract the question and ask me it in the next full council?
No, I'm
just
sorry,
out of,
Alec. It's not. It isn't.
Well, let's be
it's
honest.
not.
Come on, read it, Julie.
No, I'm
it
going to read it.
Whoa. Stop. There's no basis to rule it out, so can you continue with your question, please?
Yes, I will.
And
Thank
we
you,
will
Chair.
investigate why it wasn't done right in the first place.
Right, yes. So my question reads, which is the question, and it says, following an email from a resident and many inquiries, I have received the following. Dear Julie, following the new government just opening the borders and illegal immigrants being granted permission to stay, an estimated 90,000 of them, can you reassure me that our residents will not be pushed further down the queue who are already on social housing waiting lists, like my daughter? So that's my question. My question was to Councillor Brooke, who I have a high regard for. It's not political, but it's an important question that needs answering. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, at a time of extreme sensitivity and public safety, I'm refusing to answer the question. I would ask the councillor to resubmit at a further date. Whether there's a rule against that or not, I don't care. I'm not answering it.
It's fine. You don't have to answer the question. And there's no second question because I've answered the first one. So we'll move on to question 16. Question 16. Councillor Nightingale to Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will the leader of the council update members of the council on the results of his contact with the new government over re-establishing a fairer deal for councils like Redcar and Cleveland that have suffered so grievously under the previous Conservative government, and that the new government will restore fair funding and ensure the council's finances are sustainable into the future.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. I personally wrote to the Secretary of State for Education on July the 10th to bring her attention the challenges and financial... Mr Mayor, can I have a moment? Well, thank you. I just get my own back. Final pressures faced our children and family services. The letter highlighted that despite a number of initiatives we are undertaking and a distribution of council funds through the medium-term financial plan, children's and services continue to experience significant financial challenges, with funding for councils not keeping pace with the demand for services. The letter has asked the government to review the funding methodology for councils, restore multi-year finance settlements, provide additional funding for council areas facing higher demand on children's services, reduce the number of grants subject to a competitive bidding process, help to address issues by profiteering by service providers that we've already discussed earlier on. Councillor Kerr sort of touched on us trying to market shape the best we possibly can. The Chancellor's Audit of the Public Finance published this week has signalled the intention for a more empowered, accountable and sustainable local government system, a consolidation of funding streams for local authorities and the local government finance settlement, a multi-year spending review covering at least years to be announced in spring 2025. I have also contributed to a joint letter on behalf of the 12 North East councils that has been sent to the Secretary of State Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government earlier this week. The letter identifies areas of opportunity where the government can implement changes to local government funding to help local authorities and the system in which they operate. In approaching the spending review, we have asked the government to fully recognise the financial pressures faced by local authorities, address the inequality of not actioning the businesses rate reset, address the unfairness in the housing benefit regime linked to temporary and supported accommodation, and to take the opportunity to redistribute a range of current funding streams, particularly towards more deprived areas. We have promised 10 key asks for the government, we have proposed 10 key asks for the government to consider, which we estimate would result in an additional 140 million across the 12 North East councils.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor?
I think we all know here that over the years, £100 million has been lost as a result, in grant, as a result of the austerity programme of the previous administration in Whitehall, which of course led to the burden of taxation being transferred to council tax. And I sympathise with very much of what you've just been saying. In the election, the Labour Party promised not to increase the burden of taxation on working people. In office, they have found £21.9 billion of a black hole. And I'm prepared to accept that that very much is likely to be the case, along with the Office of Budget Responsibility. But the Chancellor, and I saw her speech in Parliament, and I saw the response from the Conservative opposition. And it does seem that cuts in spending are highly likely. Therefore, will the Leader of the Council do more than just remind his Labour colleagues down in Westminster, in government, that any council tax rise next year will increase the tax burden on working people? And of course, it's a tax which is not based on the ability to pay. So will he remind his colleagues in government that this is a tax on working people?
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I will remind them.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of the meeting. Thanks for everyone for attending.
May?
Go on.
Could we have some guidance, Mr. Mayor, on your decision not to allow a supplementary question? The fact that a question was not answered should not preclude the opportunity to ask a supplementary. So could we have some legal guidance on that, please?
Right. I've ended the meeting, so I'd say thank you very much. Meeting's finished. Thank you.